Okay, we're live now. You can share it from my page.
Okay, cool. Cool. There you go. All right. Got it. Let me. So all my technical stuff has been. All right. Cool. Got it. Got it. Got it. Let's see here. Uh, oh yeah, there it is. Okay, I see you. I see you. Back in the day, they would have been confused about. They got us all. They thought we were twins.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we get a little older now. We start to look a little different.
Look a little different, right? I got the woolly mammoth thing going on, and all
Yeah.
clean shaven.
But if I grow my beard back, though, we might be. I'm losing weight too. We might be. We it might happen again.
It might happen again. Yeah, that's right. Because about 20 years ago, they were like, somebody told me one time, they said, man, they said, Jay, I saw you playing keyboard somewhere. You were out. I said, no. I said, I don't think that was me. I said, I'm pretty sure that was Philip. I'm 100% sure that was Philip.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, for joining me live. For everybody that watches this now and later on, my purpose is to empower us and to be empowered. I'm for empowering everybody, but I'm really have a heart for my community, the community that I serve, for the Black community. Um, as I do care about everybody, but our community is underserved with knowledge, and even with the vast resource of the internet, we still need clarity on issues. And so this whole thing with me and Jay Cameron, that's been brewing for a while, but it really got sparked with the with Robert Smith paying off the student loans of Morehouse University, which was an awesome thing. It was a super generous thing that he's putting together a grant to pay off student loans. And I made a comment after that, just basically saying we can all be as generous as Robert Smith by not getting into student loan debt, and because you don't have to pay off a debt that you don't incur. And so, I believe that has sparked a great discussion, a great debate about student loans. We're not here to bash anybody that has taken a student loan, or to I'm sure there are many of you all who have success stories from student loans. By taking student loans, you've raised families, you bought houses and things. My sole purpose as as a father, not necessarily young, but as a father of young children, is to raise my children like my daddy raised me, with no debt coming out of college. Owe the advantage that I had coming out of college with no debt. Owe the advantage of most of our Caucasian families, not most, but a lot of our Caucasian families who come out with no debt, who have generational wealth passed down. And so this whole purpose of the broadcast, and Jay Cameron has been talking about this kind of stuff for a long time, is to see what can we do now? How can we be better in the future in terms of securing um, financial freedom for our families, especially in the African American community? How can we come out now with a lot of us in our 40s and early 50s and late 30s making considerable amounts of money? How can we now secure the future so that we can pass down generational wealth to our children? So, Jay, with all that being said, thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here. This is a topic that I'm passionate about, and I think you eloquently articulated everything. I mean, because like you said, so many people have, in previous years, have definitely found um, where some of their successes come by way of the student loan industry, and so what we're seeing now is kind of a shift in the cost of college, and then the amount of loans that are being taken out, and what it's actually doing to so many people on the flip side of that. So it sounds like this is going to really going to be a good discussion tonight.
Yeah, I've known you as a minister, playwright. You do a lot of things. You pastor. How did you get involved in this whole entrepreneur thing and really talking about student loans?
Well, I've been talking about, my cousin reminded me, I've been talking about student loans since the '90s. and he was, ironically, he was going to Morehouse back
Mm.
in '95. And I kind of said to him,
Wow.
I said, hey, I said, just kind of be careful with those student loans. And so he had actually carried those student loans up until not too long ago, actually, which was and so you're talking about 20 some odd years with the student loans, and he ended up going to another school. He ended up transferring out of Morehouse, and then he went somewhere else. But financial literacy has always been a topic that's been dear to me because it has it's a topic that's not often talked about in our community, and that's one of the reasons why you'll see the income disparities, you'll see the net worth disparities, because it's not at the forefront in our community like other communities. So other communities, you'll see where they sit down and they talk to their children about preparing them for the future as it pertains to finances. And of course, I don't want to make a blanket statement, because I know that there are a lot of people in our community who place emphasis on financial literacy. But I know in the places where I frequented, in the family circles that have been in, the social circles that I was in, we didn't talk about it. And so because that topic wasn't really emphasized, I watched a lot of people struggle as it pertained to finances. So when it came to student loans, it was right after my children were, my children were young. We were still having them, but they were young, and I was thinking to myself, we were doing the calculations, and I said, if we pay $100,000 per child, and we have 4 children, I said, if we pay $100,000 per child, I said, what are we going to save for retirement? Now, this was about 20 years ago. So something in my mind said that there's something not right here. I said, because we're in a two-parent household, two-income household. I said, what does the single parent do who might have 4 children? I said, there's something going on. So it led me on a quest to find alternatives to get around what I saw was going to be a financial catastrophe if I went on the path that they were prescribing, because they tell you, well, you need to have $1.5 million in retirement savings if you want to retire comfortably, and then you need to save this additional $100,000 per child if you wanted to send them to college. And so I found that there was a lack of education as it pertained to, one, financial literacy, but then also when it came to financing college. And that's when I started working on my whole debt-free college degree initiative, because it was like, you can go without the loans. And so that's what I said, because I said, we're not going to pay $400,000 for anybody to go to college. I said, it's not going to happen. I said, we're going to need that money later. So this is how I started thinking 20 years ago. And so here we are 20 years later. So glad that I did start thinking like that, because now we have a plan. We put together a plan. We started implementing a plan back then, but now we have a plan where we're not even worrying about college in that sense, because we understand some of the different strategies and how to get around it. So that's to kind of answer your question, that's what got me started, and that's what kind of really led to this passion, this conviction to help people overcome. I call them slave loans. Some people don't understand why I call them slave loans, because I talk to so many Gen Xers who are really bound by them, and I see how the banking industry sets things up. See, that's the thing. I take a little bit further than just traditional education. I'm looking at the systems. I'm looking at what's going on out here that an entire not just community, but an entire population can be encouraged to take out 1.5 plus trillion dollars in student loan debt. And I said, there's something else going on. So anyway, but that's to kind of give you a little context on why I'm so passionate about student loans and financial literacy.
Well, I've known, I've run several businesses, so I know that high end tax debt and student loan debt are the two debts that cannot be erased in bankruptcy. You have to pay it. There is no getting around it. Many people really don't understand that going in. But if you don't mind sharing a little bit, how did you get around not taking out a student loan for your children?
Well, the first step in the process was looking at the cost of college, and so I looked at the cost of college, and I was like, where is the majority of, or where is a large portion of this money going? And what stuck out was room and board. So if
Mhm.
I can eliminate or reduce the room and board, I can literally cut the cost in half, because some of the room and board, uh, fees are $15,000, some more, $20,000, depending on what school you're going to. So I started looking at ways to say, okay, how do we reduce this? And my philosophy when it comes to debt reduction, when it comes to pretty much anything, is what can we cut first? Not
Mhm.
because I was like, okay, where can we cut back? So I would look at a school and say, I'll just use like a state school. Like state school, you can probably go to, say, somewhere around between $25,000 and $30,000 a year, depending on which school, and this is including room and board. So I said, well, if you take out the room and board, now you're down to $15,000. Well, back then when I first started, it was more around eight, nine, $10,000 a year. So I said, okay, now that's a little bit more doable. I said, because now I'm starting to think, you know, paying $30,000 a year, $25,000 a year, that's $2,000, $2,500 a month. But if I can now adjust my strategy, now it's more realistic, and we can pay, don't have to go to that school. That's the other thing. I had options, because now I'm now going in as an educated consumer, understanding that I have leverage, meaning that I have something that they want. They have the education or the credentials that I want, but I have something that they want. And what they want from me is the money. So
Right.
once I understood that, it's like, no, I don't have a choice. No, I understood I had a choice, and the choice was, well, I don't have to go to your school. I'll go somewhere else, and this is what it is. And because I'm not going to put myself at a disadvantage financially for the sake of you pretty much telling me that I have to pay your price. So once I started looking at that, I started saying to myself, okay, now it's making more sense. But then I even took it a step further to say, now how can we reduce these expenses even more? So I started looking at the scholarships. Now, typically where a lot of people make mistakes is they'll just kind of send in their scholarships like they send in resumes. Like, so you put your resume in on a lot of these headhunter sites and they get lost in cyberspace. That's what happens to a lot of scholarships. So I'm thinking, how do we I don't want to say get around this, but how do we now take advantage of the scholarship tool? And one way to take advantage of the scholarship tool is to not necessarily go where everybody else is going. Perhaps look for some of these scholarships that people are overlooking, because there are billions of dollars in scholarship money that go unclaimed each year.
Mhm.
It's like, what? It's like that. So you're talking about a $1.5 trillion student loan debt, but then there are billions of dollars of scholarship money that's available. And so I started thinking like that, and I said, now we've already reduced the cost of college by eliminating or reducing the housing. Now, some people say, well, no, they don't want to reduce the housing, so they just kind of want to go and pay it and do it that way. I mean, each person has to do, they're going to do it the way they want to do it. But when I was putting the plan together, I'm thinking strictly from, how do I get the same credentials for half the price? So same credentials, state schools, and this is when I was just looking at state schools, because you can go to quote unquote Ivy League schools. They have different grants. They have different programs set up for lower income families, or even higher income families, because that's just kind of like their culture. And so understanding that the part of their culture, I never discourage anybody from applying to some, the Ivy League schools or some of the more expensive schools. It's just kind of understanding that system a little bit better. But yeah, but that's what, for me, once I started thinking in terms of business, and I kind of took the emotion out of it, and I kind of looked at it from the standpoint of, if we're gonna, first of all, we're not going to spend $400,000 to send these kids to school. We're not going to go $400,000 into debt for them to go after something that has no guarantees. See, that's the other part.
Mhm.
So there's no guarantee attached to this. There's no, you can get, a lot of my clients are on the doctorate level or on the JD level, and they're struggling financially because of this very thing. So they have multiple degrees, and they have businesses that are up and running. They have clients, they're making money, but it's this drag of these loans that's like holding them back, from really being able to go to the next level. So when I started looking at that, Phil, it just kind of, I guess back then, and it just kind of stuck out to me to say, this is not the road that we want to go down as a family, because I could see I saw the potential of what it could do as far as holding people back down the line.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a lot. Thank you for sharing that. You I lost my train of thought, but you were talking about student loans and cutting down costs and things of that nature. What did your children think about that? A lot of times we face peer pressure from our not peer pressure, but parent pressure from our children because they want to go to a certain school, they don't want to go in state, they want to travel or whatever, and they're looking at you like like, why are you trying to hinder me, or it's the whole notion of if I don't go to this school, then I won't get the type of job that I need to get, or I can only go here to get the type of education that I want to go. How did you combat all of that?
That's a loaded question, Phil. That's a loaded question. The first thing is they were kind of raised under the philosophy that we weren't going to take out loans, because I got it early. When I saw my peers struggling, not unable to buy homes, or having to wait, that the income ratio was off. So when I started doing my seminar, this was in 2011. And my older son at that point, I think he was 11 or 12. So he wasn't even thinking about it like that. He was playing sports. And so I'd never really got any pressure from them. I know when he graduated from high school, he was kind of looking like, so what you going to do? I was looking at him. Now we've had this conversation. Now what you going to do? So
Right.
it was kind of like that kind of deal. So we didn't really face that in our household, but I can tell you that when I've been on the I guess the crusade about the whole student warning families about the student loans, I could see it on the faces of the kids and the parents. Now, one interesting statement that I've always made, and it helps some parents, that'll ruffle their feathers, other parents that'll help set them free. And the statement is this, and when I say it, they're like, oh. I say, well, parents, you don't owe your child a college education, meaning owing it to them, meaning like they're born and you better do this, and if you don't. So once parents hear that, then what I add to it is I say, now you want to support your child, you want to help them go to the next level, but you're filling out the applications, you're the one looking for the school, you're the one doing all of the legwork, and they're just kind of sitting back chilling. I said, so if you make it a family group effort where perhaps maybe your student isn't working a job, but maybe they're out there aggressively researching scholarships where they can find these private scholarships that are out here. And now when you all are working together, because it's their education, so now you're giving them work ethic on top of the education, because the reality is this, and you work with schools and you work with kids, this is so important. I see people who have degrees, because I've hired people. Now I'm gonna really break this down. I've hired people who are just coming out of college. I've hired people on the master's degree level that don't have any work ethic. Meaning they just show up like, I have a degree and pay me. But then they show up late. They don't want to work. They don't want to do different things. And I'm saying, you have a degree for real? So what ends up happening is that when you or allow your child to be an active participant in their own education, it now helps them to take ownership of it. So that's what we do in our household. I tell my sons, I say, I'll meet you wherever you meet me. And so then now it's putting the responsibility on them. Say, I'm here to support you, but just don't expect me to do everything. So a lot of parents are going through this thing where if they don't have the money, meaning if they don't have it in the bank, now what ends up happening, they're feeling guilty. And the easiest thing to come right after that are the student loans, because guess what? If you've been in the public school system, you're not used to paying for education. You've been year after year after year. Now suddenly year 12 comes up, and now here comes year 13, and they're saying, well, I have to pay now. But then they said, well, no, we're going to make it real easy for you. Don't worry, we got it. You don't need a job. All you need to do is sign right here, and we'll make it real easy for you to continue. So guess what? The natural part of it, because most parents are not used to actually paying, especially the prices. They say, well, okay, this is easy. We just want to keep it going. We don't want you to, stop. We don't want any bumps in the road. So we'll just keep it going without really considering what they're signing up for. And that's the part. Once I understood, like the where you typically can't discharge it in bankruptcy, I said, who signs up? In my mind, I'm thinking to myself, who knowingly signs up for that with $80,000, $100,000, and nothing. So most people don't even know when they're signing up for it that clause is even in there. Some people do, some people do, but the average consumer doesn't know. So that's what set a red flag up to me to say that you basically own me at that point. So you can garnish my social security, you can garnish my paycheck, you can attach liens to different things. If I'm a medical doctor, if I'm a lawyer, if I'm anything that has a license, if I default on that, now you can take my license to work. There are now some states that are actually looking at taking people's driver's license for student loan default. So when I started hearing that, I said, "There's something else in the mix here." And guess what? I know our community was not getting the message. I know that what was being pumped to us was, just go to school, get a degree, and everything is going to be okay. But then I'm talking to all of these attorneys. I'm talking to these doctors, medical doctors on the doctorate level in other professions, master's level, and I'm hearing them really lament over what's going on with their finances, and they're making $200,000 a year, and they're talking about there are other issues that were taking place, but then they have $300,000 in student loans, $200,000 in student loans. Like the medical doctors, $300,000 in student loans easily. So now I'll never forget the story of a young man. He was talking about his mother, who was a medical doctor. He worked at Starbucks. He said, "I will never take out a student loan because my mother is trapped in her profession. She can't do anything else." And so when I was like, wow, I said, and that was really a deep perspective from a young man to hear that his mom, who was a medical doctor, felt trapped in her profession. She was in her mid 40s. She wanted to do something different, but she was still carrying $200,000 in student loan debt. So there, Phil, there's so much that comes with this. I will say this: what's really interesting is I'm a marketing person. I mean, you talked about the productions. Marketing is my background, but what I have discovered recently is how traditional education has been tied to identity.
Mm.
So if you don't have certain credentials, meaning traditional uh, uh, credentials, if you don't have that, now society will have this way, or it's perceived that they're going to look down on you. And something that I tell students, also I've been saying over the years, is that education is for everyone, but college might not be. And
Right.
so there's a big difference, because when we hear education, we automatically assume education means college. And that means it's a part of education. It's a piece of the puzzle. Whereas what about the plumbers and the electricians and the cosmetologists? What about those people who have those trades that make just as much money? If you put together the right plumbing business, you can charge 20, 30, depending on the size of the house, $20,000 to put all the pipes in a house, and that you can do four of those. You can hire your crew and go out here and make more money than somebody who's doing a different profession. I mean, each person has to decide what they want to do, but when we hear education, we automatically think, because of the branding, that the only way that you'll be educated is if you have a college education. But education is broad. Education is a lifelong process. It's a daily process. And so as I begin to really understand that, there's a lot of education that's being lost because people are tied to the student loans, and they don't have the flexibility to go learn something else, because they have to get up and work to pay the loans off, and their families, that are tied up in this stuff. I mean, generations, their grandparents who co-sign for their children and co-signing for their grandchildren, and parents signing for their children, And all of this stuff is, there's some families that are $500,000-$600,000 in student loan debt. And then somebody decides, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to go to school anymore. I want to
Right.
go, I want to travel the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. For those of y'all who are watching, first of all, please share. Thank you so much. This program will be up for as long as Facebook is up. We can go back and watch this and get, and get some nuggets from this. There are a couple of questions, and I'm going to try to answer these questions because I know people, are here because they have questions or they comment one or the other.
Hey Phil,
Hello,
real quick,
Michael.
if you can make it public, I think you have it on friends only because I'm
Okay.
trying to share it on my page.
Let me do that right now.
Yeah. I was looking. I said,
okay, done.
all right, cool. Let me.
I normally do that. I don't know why I didn't. But yeah, y'all can share this now. Thank you so much. Philip Michael Williams wanted to know. He said, "I've incurred debt twice over. I guess he's saying student loan debt. I've incurred student loan debt twice over, but want to still find freedom. What can I do?"
My first question would be how much student loan debt, because you have some debt that's $10,000, which is depending on the income level, which can be pretty easy to to overcome based on the income level, and then you have some student loan debt that's considerably higher. So that would be my question, because I would want to understand the proper context of the debt. Now, the first thing I will say this: no, with any situation, would be to look at reducing overhead. That's just a philosophy I have in business, and just in general. Reducing the overhead and really looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, what can I cut back? And sometimes that's a little difficult, because you have other things going on. But if it's
Right.
$10,000, now you can typically find money somewhere in there. If you're talking about $100,000, then that's going to require a more aggressive approach, and that's in addition to reducing overhead. Now you're going to have to really or consider looking at increasing your income, because that's the increasing of the income and the reducing of the overhead is going to give you margin in there. So if you can find $500 or $600 each month that you can now dedicate to these student loans, then that will accelerate your process. Some people can do more. Some people are so fed up with it, they're like, listen, I'm going to go find me another $2,000 a month and get out here and do what I need to do. But they also have income-based repayment programs. But you really want to understand what that means, because none of this is going to stop the interest. The interest is going to keep growing. These loans are designed to make the bankers, or I should say the government, money. So they're not trying to reduce this thing. And I mean, even now they do have some loan forgiveness programs that are out there where if you work in certain public sectors, you can work in certain areas, I should say, and get the loans either reduced or eliminated. So I would encourage you to investigate those types of programs. Let me say this, I never encourage anyone to go into a college education with a forgiveness program in mind. And the reason why I say that, meaning, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go to school and they have a forgiveness program and I'm going to join it and that's what I'm going to do. The reason why I don't encourage that is because those forgiveness programs can change with the stroke of a pen. So they can have the program all set up, ready to roll. You sign up for it. Legislation can change, and now you're stuck with $80,000, and you thought in debt that you thought was going to be forgiven if you worked somewhere, for 5 years. So I strongly discourage going in with a forgiveness program in mind, because it can change, and it's happened to people. I mean, if you just research forgiveness programs changing, you'll be able to see how that happens. So that's the deal. Reduce overhead, increase. Go ahead.
So Miss Tarina Ali, Tarina, how you doing? Great friend of mine from long time. She wants to know, how is student loan debt different from getting a loan on a house?
Well, the bankruptcy one, that's the deal. The fact that you will find it extremely difficult to discharge it in bankruptcy should that need arise. Now, most people aren't anticipating that need. But also most people don't anticipate a foreclosure coming or a repossession coming either. You know, sometimes life happens. A friend of mine, she was a medical doctor, and she was in her career, early 40s. Cancer. She got breast cancer. She was When she was a child, she had kidney cancer, but now as an adult, the breast cancer came back. And with the student loans, they did not give her a break at all. She was to the point where she was about to lose her home. They were not willing to cut her any slack as far as discharging any of the loans. And then when she passed away, she still had the student loans. And if a parent co-signs for a child who co-signs their student loans, and the child passes away, whoever that, whether it be Sally Mae or Navient, or if it's a private lender who's sponsoring the loan, they can still attach that loan to the parent and go after the parent. And it has happened where a student passes away, and now here this loan is, and the parents are like, well, the child passed away, and the bank is like, well, you co-signed for it. So the difference, though, the biggest difference is that you can get rid of a house. You're not going to get rid of that student loan. So you can go file bankruptcy and say, take my house, and they'll say, okay, and they'll put it back on the market and make money from it. And the other difference is that the house is something tangible, but with a student loan, there's nothing really tangible attached to the student loan. Some might argue, well, it's the education, but it depends. It really depends. If you get a degree that's not, you can't get a job with, it's not really, the return on the investment is not the same. So, but just to kind of narrow the question down, that the bankruptcy aspect of the student loans versus you can bankrupt a house if you need to.
Right. Holland Hargrove asks, how can we as African Americans create learning opportunities within our own neighborhoods among the entrepreneurs in our neighborhoods and the folks who want to learn from them?
Well, as far as creating opportunities, we just have to be aggressive with it. That's part of what we're doing right now. This conversation that we're having, well, it was twofold, because we saw each other in the grocery store, and you like, keep doing what you're doing, Jay. I was like, okay, you see what's going on? He's like, yeah. So, but also the conversations that we're having on social media. To sometimes, what I do now, I don't even post, I mean, every now and then I'll post something funny or silly, but now I'm leveraging the social media to say, hey, let's have some serious conversations out here, or some content that's going to help people go to the next level mentally. So if we have more people being intentional about having these conversations, now it changes the narrative. Now we're not into just the reality TV and all those other things that's going on out here to distract us from what's really happening. That's what I'm on a mission to do, to let people know, hey, this is what's really going on. Because, one, we can get our educations and we don't have to go in the hole to do it. Now, some people may choose to do it. Everybody's prerogative, like we said earlier. Each person decides what they want to do. But there's not enough conversation to show the alternatives. And then, as you were talking about entrepreneurship, to even have entrepreneurship at the top of the list of things that we talk about in the community, especially when it comes to our youth, and not just our youth, with everybody, because we have ideas. Like a friend of mine with Jackie with the furlough cheesecakes. The furlough happened. They had these cheesecakes, and now it just took off. Who would have thought? So here's another thing. A lot of times we think that our pathway to financial freedom comes through the path that everyone else takes. Sometimes it takes a different path. Sometimes we have to, be creative and establish a vision. And the way that we do this is through these types of conversations.
Right. Somebody, Dexter Kaysen wanted to know, is there a website for student loan forgiveness?
I'm sure there is one. Let me see. If you Google it, because there may be multiple ones, because they have different programs out there for this. But I'll tell you like this: it's not the website where you just kind of sign up and they forgive it. It's because see, their thing is this. This is what we have to understand about when you understand American history. This is why it's important for us to understand American history. American history, when you understand human capitalism and abusive capitalism. Once you start understanding how this system is set up, it is not set up for everybody to be at the top. It is set up for the majority to be at the bottom, another portion of the majority to be in the middle, and a very few to be at the top. That's how you can have so many people with so few people with so much money controlling everything that's going on beneath them. So so once you understand that, it's all for us. It's really about positioning. And so I would encourage you, if you do have the student loans, to seek out the student loan forgiveness programs, because you may qualify. A lot of the programs are, and when I say this, meaning that provided you already have them. So just kind of putting that back in there, provided you already have them. So somebody, you may qualify with them. A lot of people don't qualify because they make you jump through a lot of hoops. But I would just say do a Google search, student loan forgiveness program, see what's out there, do your due diligence to really do your homework to make sure that they're legitimate, and just kind of see what's available.
Yeah, I think, and you know, I kind of want to stir the conversation in a different direction. Thank you all for your questions. Continue to ask them. We'll try to answer as many as we can in the time we have left. But I think one major, or two things that really bug me about our community. The first thing is, I think that we don't think about long-term wealth when it comes to our children. For example, our goal is to get them a good education and get them through college, and then leave it alone. You're on your own now.
Right.
We don't really think of the long-term strategy. You know, college is just a part of the plan, but it's not the whole plan. So I was having this conversation with my children yesterday, who was 13 and 11, my two boys, about what the plan is with my dad right now. My dad is 81. My mother's will turn 75 this Friday. She has dementia, and we've been taking care of her at his house. And because he did certain things with his finances, we don't have to put her in a nursing home. We have people who come, who we pay to come to our house to take care of our mother. Now, one of the big reasons why he did that is because his goal is, and he's actually trying to turn his house into a somewhat of a nursing facility, because he's trying to hold on to all of his assets to pass down to me and my brothers, just two of us. Now, me and my brother have decided, because my brother, both of us are doing pretty good, that our mission is to pass that down to our children. We can do fine with what we got right now. So that automatically puts our children, if this happens, if the Lord will it, if this happens, my sons at least will be set up to be millionaires before they turn 30 years old.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think we don't think about that kind of plan when we're thinking about our children. Here's the other thing my dad did. He taught me a lot. He never told me, and this is something that we have to get rid of in the Black community. He never said to me, son, when you turn 18, you have to move out. Be your own man.
There you go. There you go.
School of hard knocks. You know, I don't know where we got that from, but it's one of the most, I mean, it works for some, but for most it does not. And we have stifled the family wealth situation that we can have together. Because we think that by kicking our children out and telling them they have to leave our house, that somehow we're making them better off. You know, and for some that don't want to work and be lazy and all that kind of stuff, that may be the case. But if your children are like that, you have to look in the mirror and consider the source, how they get that way.
Right.
You know, so when I was 22, I had an opportunity to buy an apartment building. And my dad looked at me. He never looked at me and said, well, son, you don't have anywhere to live. Why would you go out and buy a 4-unit apartment building? You know what he said? Let's go look at the apartment building, because my basement is empty. And you can live in my basement for as long as you want. Let's go out here and let's get this property. And so I didn't end up moving out my house until I was 26 years old.
There you go.
And that's how you start to create a wealth situation that starts to work for your family. And now we're sitting around. Now, we're not trying to figure out how he's going to take care of me. We're trying to figure out how he's going to take care of his 3 grandchildren.
That's right.
And so now I'm telling my children, what are you going to do? I'm asking my children, what are you going to do about your children? Because if things go the way we planned it, you're already taken care of.
That's right.
You haven't even turned 18 yet, and your situation is already taken care of thanks to your grandfather, who was in the civil rights movement, who grew up, in racism, and had, he grew up in a time people had hoes turning. He decided that his family was going to turn a different direction. Now, I'm saying all that to say this, that people our age, I'm 44, my generation, especially if you live in the DMV area, a lot of us make a good amount of money, and we really, really have an opportunity to change that for future generations down the road. And so I really, really want us as the Black community, it's time to wake up. I think Trump has caused us to realize that we can do things together that we've never thought we could do on another level. We always knew we could do things, but it's on another level. I see people coming together. I see people supporting each other. I see Black businesses rising. I see websites I see not websites, but Facebook pages highlighting every day the accomplishments of Black people and what we are doing. The U.S. Naval Academy is graduating the largest class of Black female cadets ever. There is so much going on. Now we just need to tie the knot together with this generational family thing so that now we can start to, we already hundreds of years behind because our white brothers and sisters used us to create their own generational wealth. But now we have a chance to really, really get started on our own. And so I just wanted to make that point, and I open it up for you to make a comment about that.
Well, you nailed it, man. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It sounds like you've been in my house just with the conversations. I said, I know we might be more twins than what other people. But as you were talking about it, because that's something that I told my sons early on, that we weren't going to rush them out of the house.
Right.
Because I said, why don't you take advantage of, let's do this as family group economics. Because my son right now, he's 19 and he's in the process of buying his first property. And
right.
Now what you do, I said, I'm going to walk you through this because this is what I've done. I said, by the time you're 30, you'll be set. I said, we can go into this together. We can buy that building over, get an apartment building. We can go into DC and do different things. I'm building my businesses. I'm doing what I'm doing on my end, along with my wife. And so it's like, hey, now I want you, because my oldest son, he actually works with one of my businesses. So I told him, I said, listen, I'm training you. I'm giving you the philosophy. I'm giving you an education. I'm giving you another piece of the education.
Right.
And what he's doing, I said, because he had a moment, he had a hiccup in his brain there for a little while. So he was trying to figure out what he was going to do. I said, okay, cool. I said, now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to pay for this for you, but I'm going to give you the tools so you can earn the money, so you can learn how to pay for this on your own. So that's what he's doing. So I said, okay, cool. I said, because I'm still investing in you. I said, I'm giving you the tools and I'm giving you the education, but now you need a little bit more time to mature. So I'm not going to throw you to the wind or throw you out there. I'm going to walk you through this. But the biggest thing is that as he started to mature, now our conversations are different. He comes in the house with a little bass and, hey, Dad, how you doing? We're working. He's going, I mean, this boy can landscape anything you can. I mean, he's been in the landscaping arena for less than a year, but he can go out there and do pretty much anything because I've coached him, and so he's learning. So I'm thinking down the line, if he gets us at 19, then what will he be doing at 22, at 26? And so this is just another part of it while he's still going to school. And so he's pursuing that side of it, but he's also learning this. So, but Phil, as you were talking about the families, you said something that was really key. We send the kids out too soon now. The lazy ones who don't want to do anything, they might need, they might need a little bit of real world experience. But the ones who are really trying to do what they need to do, a lot of times we send them out there too soon. We're sending rent money out the house. They could stay in the house. They don't have to spend that money. They could now use that money as investment capital. They can start saving. Instead of spending that $1,000 a month in rent or $600 a month, now they can start building with that. Or they can start investing it, different, a lot of different ways to make investments. But what your father did was on point because, like you said, you don't have to be taken care of. So now you're setting it up. You're taking his principles and his philosophy and passing it to your boys. And here's the funny thing: they probably won't even need it.
That's it. That's the whole point.
Right. Yeah, they won't need it. It'll be like they'll say, "Oh, well, we don't need it, Dad. We got this," and then they'll pass pass it on to their kids, and before you know it, here's all of these, whether it's all of this net worth is now being passed down, and you didn't get it tied up in a lot of different things. Like you said, you didn't do the student loans, you didn't get it tied up in other things, and now you're at a position. At 44, I'm 46, so I got you by a couple years. You're in a position where you can even do this for your sons, and so that's huge, man, and that's a very valuable lesson that you just shared with everybody.
Yeah, it's called leverage. My great grandfather had 14 children. Only two of them are left. My great aunt and great uncle, and they're both in their 80s. And he owned 300 acres of land. He took those 300 acres of land and put almost all the 14 children through college. Leverage. They still own the land.
Wow.
My aunt, who is now 81 years old, her son is 46. He has an MBA. He has no debt. I don't even think he's ever bought a car, because every car she bought, she just gave it to him when she went to buy a new one.
Right. So kept them out of that thing, because that's that predatory lenders. They're getting that car game too.
Yeah, I'm trying to tell you, this is what other families and other races do for their children that we seem to think there's a problem with. We seem to think that somehow our children are not going to be as successful if we help them.
Right.
Our version of help is got to be hard knocks. And that's not the version of help that especially this generation of children need. They need help. They need educational help, and they need it from birth. I think for every if there's any young mother that watches this after this is over, and you're pregnant or you have a young child, this is the time for you to start a stock fund, research, mutual funds, low, medium, high risk things, all kinds of insurance situations. It's all kinds of things that you can start right now that would be so easy for you. Me and my children have an annual ritual now. I don't spend any of change that I get. So if I spend $1, something costs 80 cents, I get 20 cents. I put it in this bowl, and I keep stacking these bowls up every year full of change.
Okay.
And every year we have this ritual where we all go to the bank with this change, and this is for them. And we deposit it half in one son's account, half in another. And then they go home and they see my wife. They go on the computer and decide how they're going to invest this year's worth of change in the stock market. And so in addition to them, now they have to start their own businesses this year. But they've been doing this. And so they have been getting this financial education for a long time. They know that they own stock in McDonald's and Noodles and Company and places where they go and eat and frequent a lot. They own stock in. And they understand these concepts early. And if we start to rear our children in this way, you won't have to worry about them being lazy.
That's right.
Because they'll catch that fire early.
That's right.
Once they start tasting, some success and some and start getting their hands on some money and things like that, it will catch fire, and they will begin to understand what they need to do. And you made such a powerful point about your children won't even need it. And that's my prayer, is that my children will say, hey, this is my grandfather's house. We use this situation here to take care of things that we now want to do for our children. And this is how we create the generational thing. So, thank you so much for joining me about the student loan thing. There's two sides to it. Yes, we talked about not getting into student loans, but there's the other side where people are already in student loans. They have hundreds of thousands of dollars for debt, or $50,000 and above for debt, and they're wondering, how do they get out of this debt? It's easy to say pay it off, but what are some strategies that a person could use right now who has a house, a car, a job, and a mountain of student loan debt?
Well, I've never had student loan debt, but I know what it's like to pay off a mortgage.
Okay.
And so I know, because we paid off our house last year, and I know that what I had to do was to focused on it like a laser beam. We sacrificed because I didn't want the mortgage from the standpoint of I understood how much interest it was really costing me. So if I let that thing hang around too long, I was like, wow, okay, we paid this amount for the house, but for real, if we let it hang around for another 10 years, it's going to cost us this. So what I did, first thing I did was I scrubbed my finances, meaning I went through everything, every expenditure each month. And I looked at it. I said, do we need this? So I adjusted the cable plan. Like by getting rid of a couple of channels we didn't even watch, reduced the cable bill by $50. So I said, okay, let's go. Let's start there before we start adding, everything else to it. So let's go do that. So I would encourage you to go through your bank statement, through your credit cards, through everything, and sit down and say, do that subscription that you forgot about that's hitting your account at $29 a month. You will find, chances are, you will find money there before you even start looking to go and get another job. So that's what I did. Scrub the finances, went through that. Then what I did, I said, all right, I have some talent. I have some skills. Phil, my background is in radio. I was doing voiceovers. I was
Mhm.
doing video editing because that's another thing that every skill set that I had, I put to work. I started businesses. I do snow removal. So that's one of the reasons why I got into snow removal in 2009 and built that over the past, 10 years. I can't even believe it's almost 10 years now. But that's what I had to do. And so if you're looking at a mountain of student loan debt, it's not just easy. It's not easy to say, well, okay, pay it off. But what I want you to do is start thinking strategically about working with the resources that you do have. Look at what you have in front of you. Maybe you can get more overtime on your job. Instead of taking a tax refund and blowing it on something else, now you can start chipping away at some of those student loans. Because if you really think about it, if you break $80,000 in student loan debt up over 5 years and treat that like a car payment, if you start thinking about it like that, so you know what, I want to pay this $80,000 off in 5 years. Now you can start breaking that down into smaller bites and looking at it what it would cost you per month. I'm not sure what it would cost per month. I know I have my calculator, but I'll see if I can pull it up real quick because I do this on one of my talks. I actually walk people through this. Let's see, calculators. I'm on bankrate.com. And so let's see, bankrate.com. You know what I'll do is I'll go to finaid.com, finaid.com, finaid.com. And you start, let's say, .org, I'm sorry, finaid.org. So let's say you have $80,000. Let's see if it'll get to me real quick. I just want to throw some quick numbers out there. Loan calculator repayment. All right. And $80,000 balance, 6.8%. Y'all track with me. And I'm going to do a 5-year term on this. And all right, so now, let's say over the course of 5 years, you say, now everybody's not going to be able to handle this amount of a payment. Maybe it's going to take you 10 years, but somebody's going to be really aggressive. So, like, this payment is like $1,500 a month. If you are out there and you're tired of it, perhaps you break that down per week, per day, and to see how you can do it. If you need to stretch it out a little bit longer, let's say you go 10 years with it. Because at some point, see, this is the thing that I tell people all the time. We think that we're avoiding it, but we're really not avoiding it. Eventually, it's going to catch us. So even when we take out the loans, it will eventually catch us. So what I'm encouraging you to do is, okay, so like if you do a 10-year repayment and you're just paying out of pocket, now you're looking at $920 a month. So at that point, you now put together a plan to say, how can I come up with either $1,500 a month or $920 a month? What do I need to do in order for that to happen? Some people, what you can do, you can rent out a room. So you say, okay, well, I have all of these rooms. I know one young lady, one way she would pay off her student loans. She had a townhouse. And what she did, she was single. She had a 4-bedroom townhouse and she rented out 3 of the rooms. So much to the point where not only did it cover her mortgage on her house, but she was actually making money on top of it. So sometimes when you start once you know the numbers, once you know your situation, now you can put the strategy together. Perhaps there are income-based repayment programs or loan forgiveness programs where you can get some or all of it forgiven. But let's say you don't have anything. it at the end of the day, it's going to come down to having to put together a strategy and implement some things to make it happen. That's how we were able to pay off our house. I was not looking for, uh, at that point, I wasn't looking for a government program to pay my house off. I knew that I was going to have to get out there and do what I had to do. So use all of your skills. And sometimes I know a young lady, she had $90,000 in student loan debt. And she had been listening, got tired of me talking about the student loans. She was like, I'm tired of you talking about these student loans. But she had a skill. She's a graphic artist. And the funny thing is that she wanted to change her career. She wanted to become a missionary. And this was with $90,000 in student loans. And I just kind of looked at her. I said, now, it's what you want to do is an admirable thing, but you can't just leave that student loan. You can't leave that hanging out there. So here's what she did. She was working for a company. I think she might have been making about $65,000 a year. But her skills were so good that she started freelancing outside of the company. And they couldn't control that. It was no conflict of interest or anything like that. So she started making so much money outside of the company. She said, well, I'm going to resign. She was able to, when she resigned, she was able to contract her services back to the company that she was working for more money. She paid those $90,000 in student loans off and so the student loan served as a motivation for her to maximize her skills. Now her artwork is, I can't even put it to words, is how good the artwork is. Here's the real funny part of the story. While she was on a missions trip over in Kenya, she's over there minding her business, and she meets this young man. And so, long story short, they end up getting married, and they're back here in the States, and they have a little girl now. But she paid off those student loans by using the skills that she already had. And so, what I encourage everybody to do, use the skills that you have, and once you really become. What I had to do, I got so tired of my mortgage. I was tired of it. I was tired of that $1,600 a month. I was tired of that, coming every month. I was like, you know what? Let's get rid of this. And it happened. So you can do it. I want you to know that you're not helplessly bound to a student loan. You're not helplessly bound. You can use that student loan, that you can use that as the catalyst for you to create something, for you to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to put it on a timetable. I'm going to go find extra money that I'm already making. If I need to cut back on this, maybe I don't need to eat out every day. I had it so bad at one point where I was spending $600 a month eating out, Phil. $600 a month. So some people are doing more than that. They eat out in the morning, they eat out at lunch, they eat out at dinner. And some people are close to $1,000 a month. So when we start looking at it, you can begin to find that money in there and start making some positive progress.
What services do you offer?
Oh goodness, I do a lot of financial education, that with my financial detox classes. I do that. That's something that I'm adamant about. I really want people to understand what's going on and understanding the power of positioning. Because as we talked about, even as it pertains to the Bible and ministry, when you look in the Old Testament and you see how God wanted Israel to be positioned, He was very clear. I want you to be above and not beneath. And I want you to be in a position. So when you look at ancient Israel and you see how God was really kind of keeping them outside of the world systems, and where He didn't even want them charging each other interest, because He understood that what could happen in that case with the fellow brothers, it's called usury. That's what it's called. So He was like, don't even charge your fellow brother usury, but you can charge a foreign nation usury. So when you start thinking about it and understanding positioning, when we begin to understand the power that we have with the money that we do make, the Black community, 47 million strong, billions and billions of dollars flow into our community, and unfortunately, it flows right back out of the community. And a lot of times it's because businesses are set up in our community that aren't from the community. And I was to kind of answer your question as far as the services, it's education. But when I'm riding around and I'm looking, even in some of the most densely populated areas of our community as it pertains to African Americans, many of the businesses are not black owned. Many people come here and they, I say culture vultures, they come in and they kind of take the resources. So I spend time educating on that level, teaching people how to get their money in order, and showing them the power, showing them how to avoid the student loans, and showing them how to how compounding interest works, teaching them how to invest, showing them a lot of strategies that my wife and I use. I teach teens and young adults and kids. I mean, it's all across the board, but it's not from a greed perspective. It's from a stewardship perspective.
Right.
It's from the perspective of take what you have, take what the resources that you have and multiply that. I'm reminded of the story of the parable of talents. Take, if it's 1, 2, or 5, make that work and begin to start there. And then you hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. So those are the things, those are the principles that I teach. If anybody, I mean, I'm on Facebook at Jay Cameron Official, and they can follow me on Instagram. Same thing at Jay Cameron Official. But Phil, just glad to be able to have this conversation. It's a breath of fresh air, man. I'm reading your post, getting excited.
Well, I'm going to ask you to. We need to do this again because we really, there's so much to get into, and I think that our community has awakened, and they're ready to have this conversation. And I think that it's really important. So thank you so much for joining us. I know the hour's late. Thank you for everybody who joined us. Now you can go back and watch this. Look, I did this broadcast with this open door behind me, and I was hoping people saw this open door behind me because I wanted them to know that that is really what's going on right now. There is an open door for all of us to walk through and really, really take advantage of the opportunities that are available to us right now as a community of believers and as a community of people who are in the workforce. For those of us who are entrepreneurs, small business owners, there is an open door of opportunity. And if we would just come together and start to work together to make some things happen, we really, really will see unbelievable change. And it won't even matter who's in the White House. In fact, my wife reminds me, Jay, and we can end with this, that Chinatown in D.C. the people in China, the owners in Chinatown really don't care who's a part of the city council. I don't even think they have one person on the city council.
Nope.
Their economic power is so strong, and they rely on each other so much, and they have built up an economic base that is so big that they don't even care. Their influence is so heavy. The land that they occupy in DC is so prime that it doesn't even matter. And so we have $47 million in collective buying power. When we start to harness that buying power, even just in the communities that we live in, things will change automatically because after a while, it comes to a situation where you can't get anything done until you come through us.
That's right.
And so there's an open door, y'all. Let's walk through that open door. And Jay, hopefully, when your time allows, we can have part 2 of this conversation.
Anytime. Anytime.
And we want all of you all who have student loan debt. We hope that we haven't offended anyone. We want you to, whatever your situation is, all we're saying is that we believe in 2019 that there are other ways that we can accomplish the same mission that we accomplished back in the day with limited knowledge. I think that's a great way to say it. So thank you so much, my friend. And thank you to everybody who joined us. Please share this with your church congregation, share this with your friends and your family, and get the conversation started in your individual community. All right, bro. God bless you, man.
All right, Phil.
All right, take care.
Talk to you soon, man.
Yes, sir.
All right.